Hey guys and girls, Boardnail back with you. On this video I will be talking about Season 4, Episode 4 of Ozark. The episode is called Deuce. Full spoilers from the start of the review as always. And man, what a packed episode this was. Lots of exciting things going on, and I would say the best episode of the season so far. So this season just continues to build very nicely and doesn't really miss a beat. I think it's definitely on course to be the best season of the show overall, which is obviously fitting since it's the final season. So, you know, getting on for the halfway point now of the season. And of course, you know, more than that when you think it was split into two parts. But one of the things I really like about this show is the way things start off from a very simple point with a certain event happening, like a speech or just something that goes down, and then it just snowballs and impacts so many different people from there, and the drama just like builds so naturally. And this episode is a great example with that, because the opening scene is Ruth giving the speech about the partnership they have, you know, the foundation partnership, going to partnership with Claire Short and her drug company. And it's a very, you know, powerful, like, strong speech from Ruth. Sorry, not Ruth, Wendy. I'm all over the place, from Wendy. And it's all going very well. She does this whole speech about how, unlike other drug companies, like Claire's company didn't just pay the fine and move on. They actually are looking to make amends, such and such. I mean, it's a very like political speech and a very sort of, you know, glossy type speech that you would look to like put a gloss on things. But it's very well delivered and stuff, and you can see where Wendy is like coming from. But there's a certain point of the speech then where she totally like seemingly goes off script and goes to another place, and that is when she actually mentions Ben, and she actually tries to, and she's lying through her teeth obviously, because Ben never had a drug problem, but she uses that anyway, and, you know, goes totally off script, says, I know this personally because my younger brother Ben had a drug problem, and if there'd been like a facility like this for him when I was younger or when he was younger, then chances are he would still be alive today. And what I like about this scene, and as she's saying this, is the way the camera like tracks back and we get a shot of Mel in his car like listening to this. And this is what I mean about this sort of speech and her mentioning Ben having all these like ripples and repercussions, because what happens in this episode is that gives Mel an opportunity to go and dig about and try and find, well, because of this speech he sort of smells a rat, so he starts looking around to try and track Ben down. And that includes, you know, tracking down like the father, Wendy and Ben's father, who it turns out hasn't had contact with them for ages. As far as he knew, Ben had gotten a job as a school teacher, which is of course how we were like introduced to Ben. And he hasn't spoke to Wendy in years, so it's sort of made clear that they had a very like fractured like relationship. But so Wendy's father is played by Richard Thomas, who's like a really great actor, been in lots and lots of things over the years. I think he was in the miniseries back in the early 90s, pretty sure he was. A lot of people would know him from like The Waltons as John Boy. For many people that would be his most famous role. And more recently, he sort of made a comeback. You know, he was like in The Americans, had a long running role on that show as like the head of like the FBI. So yeah, really fine actor. So he's the one who plays Wendy's father in this, who Mel tracks down at some point, and it's sort of him who like calls bullshit on Wendy, claiming that Ben had like a drug problem. It's like, no, he didn't have a drug problem, and that's when Mel like repeats to him that like what Wendy says, and the father is like, oh, okay, yeah, she's a liar. Basically, she lost track of things a long time ago, went down the wrong path, and you can just tell by his language in that scene that he is like heavily religious, and knowing how cynical Wendy can be as a person, you can imagine like her really clashing with her father's like ideology. So it's not surprising they haven't spoken to each other for years. But this obviously is going to set Mal off, on other sort of paths which he can like track down, and it sort of leads to a very like tense conversation with Wendy and her father later on, because he calls and he gets Jonah, and Jonah obviously puts her on, and yeah, sort of he's like, well, were you ever going to tell me that Ben was missing? And yeah, Wendy like basically slams the phone down, like literally breaks the phone. It's a great sort of visual and effect. But yeah, obviously her making this claim and lying about Ben at this speech really sets people question her, and because Marty sort of questions her twice, because there's twice in the episode that she uses that, because she uses it later on like the telephone as well to a reporter when she's trying to get like a good spin on a story, and Marty questions it. And what I like about this, and Marty question this, saying it's just not wise, is I think on one hand he's saying it's not good strategy. You don't really want to be drawing attention to this in case, what happened, Mel went digging, in case that happens. But also, yeah, it's probably not a good sort of look, and Wendy rather coldly says it's good PR, and I think that says a lot. I think one thing I get from that reaction is it's almost like she's not dealing with things, like she's not dealing with Ben's death and how everything went down, and obviously her role in it. So I think that's definitely something I got from that response. But another side to it is, and I think Marty was shocked by it, it's not just that he thinks this is a bad idea, like strategy wise. I think it's also that he was just sort of freaked out by it and thought, okay, this is a new low, Wendy. You shouldn't be going to this place. It's really in poor taste. But as I was saying, I think her using Ben and lying about it like this really impacts a lot of people, including Ruth, because you have this storyline where, and Ruth is on vintage form in this episode, so entertaining as she always is with her swearing and stuff, laying down the law to Jonah, getting to work, I need you here, and laying down the law to like this new employee who she sort of found out has been stealing money, and that's when Jonah like suggests that she hires like a manager, like someone she can trust. And so she goes and gets Sam, who unfortunately still has like a gambling problem. So that maybe isn't the best appointment, but she sort of does know him and trust him, and I guess thinks that she can like manipulate him quite easily. So he gets the job. And so one of the big things in the episode is then her and Carrie, like the celebrity chef who she's gone into business with, they go to the casino and they want to gamble, and Charlotte calls Marty, who's with Javi at the time, but calls him just to make sure, is this okay? And again, Ruth is so entertaining on the other end of it, and it's like, no, we just want to gamble fucking money, that's it, I'm giving money to your casino. And Marty rather cautiously says, okay, let them, but keep an eye on them. And Ruth is like, okay, and get out my way, and says, whatever he said, like she repeats what Marty said back to Charlotte. So that's all good stuff. But it leads to this, and what I like about the scene is, because I said last episode that somehow things are going to get out of control and something's going to go wrong with the partnership with Carrie, and obviously this leads to that. But what's clever about the scene is then Ruth actually starts off like responsibly, because Carrie's like offering her, do you want a drink? And she's actually like, no, I want to stay sober. And so she's actually acting like sensible. And when she goes to the bar, she actually orders like a water, not an alcoholic drink. But things take a turn because she actually sees like Wendy's speech on the TV, and it's almost like her mood changes from there. So I actually like that they give her like this reason for having this change, and it's like, oh, what the fuck, let's have a wild time. It's almost like as an act of rebellion, like she wants to cause trouble at the casino. So they start getting drunk and have a wild sort of time, and obviously it doesn't end well because Carrie goes and gets high, and they've obviously taken the drugs with them, so he's getting high on like Ruth's stash, and he ODs, or like he almost dies. Ruth has to like give him a shot of like adrenaline to like save his life, and obviously the police and that are called, and there's like this big investigation. So it looks really bad on Ruth, and well, there's a couple of things. There's a dark turn in the episode because you've got like Carrie's driver, who like when Ruth tells Darlene about what happened, like he backs her up, but at the same time he's acting like all nervously, and he's like talking a lot and sort of talking almost like he's going to blackmail them just to keep their mouth shut, like not to get involved. And classic Darlene, of course, she blows him away. It's one of those, I mean, her shotgun must have some kick, because it always seems to blow people away. It's not literally that they just shoot them and they die, it's he goes flying. So must have one hell of a kick, that shotgun, and it always looks great. But yeah, this is when the episode takes a really dark turn, because Ruth and poor Wyatt have to bury like the driver as Darlene goes to bed. Of course she's not going to bury him, so they bury him, and it's this really long extended scene. And I think what I like about the scene is it's sort of showing that these are very young people still, especially Wyatt, and that they are in over their heads. They shouldn't be living this sort of life. They shouldn't be getting involved in this type of stuff. And we see that with the fallout where Wyatt just breaks down crying, and Ruth is great with him. Ruth is like really supportive and says, you can stay at my trailer tonight if you want, which he does. But the next morning, like, she's very concerned about him, because as soon as he wakes up, he says, I've got to go home, Darlene will be getting worried. And just seeing again the extreme reactions of Darlene at times, I think clearly worries Ruth, and she's concerned about the path that Wyatt is going down. But that scene of them like burying the driver was really dark. Something just unsettling about it. But the new sheriff, Guerrero, is obviously investigating what happened at the casino, and she goes to question Ruth, and Ruth obviously plays like innocent, says, she doesn't know much about it, he just claims that she doesn't like have any knowledge of what exactly happens. And Guerrero gives her like sort of a warning where she says, at the moment you've only got like minor offences on your record, so it's not really enough to like take you down, but something bigger like a drug type offence things could be different. So she gives her sort of like just this friendly warning of, mind how you go, be careful. And of course Ruth is being stubborn and doesn't want to give anything away. But what's more interesting is when Guerrero goes to interview the birds about the incident, because at that point Wendy starts trying to like direct her towards Ruth, and because the subject comes up about her taking over the hotel, and they're both like painting it in a different way. Like Wendy's trying to point towards, oh yeah, something shady's going on with that business and Ruth, and Marty tries to direct Guerrero away from it, because he just says, if you look at the business, it's a shitty business, so she probably just got like a cheap loan to start it up. I'm sure it's nothing. And it's always nice and impresses me how Marty looks out for Ruth, and even though they've had their differences and stuff, he still like cares about her and looks out for her. But he questions it again, like to Wendy. It's like, what the fuck was that, basically? And once again we see how heartless Wendy can be, because part of her thinking with this is like, because he mentions about our son's involved in that business, he could go down, and Wendy's like, well, that might be the best thing for him. He's a felon. We're losing our son. That sort of thing might teach him a lesson. And Marty can't believe what he's hearing. And even though like Wendy tries to justify it as he's a minor, he wouldn't serve any actual jail time, and that it'll just be a lesson. Obviously, that's not the point. And Marty's shaking his head, and yeah, I think us as like the audience is shaking our heads, but it just shows you that the feud goes on really between like Wendy, Jonah, and obviously Ruth. But what happens at the end of the episode, because obviously in the last episode you had like the interception of the raid on like Javi's like drugs delivery, and by the time we get to this episode there's been several like interceptions, and Javi gets like footage of one of the raids, and he actually sees the Myers involved, and she's there on the scene, which he obviously thinks is a bit suspicious. He talks to Marty about it. Marty tries to talk him around and just says, she was probably just there because they're investigating it, and she was called to it. And obviously Javi suspects she could be the mole, then Marty could be the mole, and Marty tries to talk him down, but Javi says, until I find out who the mole is, I'm going to suspend like deliveries on that, which obviously puts their whole deal with Claire in jeopardy, and Claire hears about it, gets like a news update or something on her phone when she's like having dinner with Wendy, which is pretty funny because Wendy's like, I have a feeling she already knows, says that to Marty. So yeah, Claire's obviously not too impressed, and Wendy says, we'll fix this, and she's like, yeah, you better. So Claire not too impressed. So that sort of leads to the end of the episode, where obviously Marty needs to try and find another sort of supply, so he actually goes to Ruth, and they have a really nice sort of scene where they, he brings some beer, and they sort of reminisce about when they first met, and he says, can we go into business? I'll offer you a job. I need some of your supply. And it's a really good scene, because although obviously Marty he needs the supply and he needs Ruth for something, at the same time I think he is doing it in his mind to help her out, because she's fallen on hard times as well. And there's definitely again a good rapport there, and it ends with them like looking at that weird sort of like urn which Ruth has, which has Ben's ashes in, and Ruth kind of says to Marty, why the hell did Wendy lie about Ben? And Marty's like, I wish I knew. And you just have this common ground with them, and it's a really good way to end the episode. So that's Ozark, episode 4 of the 4th season. Really strong stuff. Ace, Deuce, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. You can support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month to get some extra content, some commentary, some extra reviews. Soon I'm going to be starting an unpopular opinions video series, so you can look out for the first one of them coming soon. But I'll be back with some more Ozark soon. Take care, guys. See you soon.